Yeah, it's amazing how easy that is. Marlene, you've got a someone in the fan club.
Yes, I saw Jet.
All right. Well, Patrick Stack here, co-founder of Sports Biz Camps. Really, really, really fired up to lead off the month of October with the first of 5 installments. Um, sorry about that. I had a couple of things different going. So I'm really excited to have the first of 5 month-long installments each Thursday, focused on helping high school students and then college students kind of progress from the first step of I want to go to college all the way through I've graduated college. Now what do I do? So this is the first step in that process. And really, really excited to have an amazing group of professionals and parents, and then high school students and high school student athletes to have a really great conversation. I think this group represents almost all the perspectives that are a part of this process, right? Everyone has either gone through this process themselves individually, gone through this process as a parent, or is going through that process now as a student. So I think we've done a really great job and are really excited to introduce an amazing group of people that are going to provide a lot of great perspectives. So my role here is to moderate a little bit, facilitate, but for the most part, I'll do my best to sit back and keep quiet and let the stars of the show share the perspective. So, step one of that is you need to learn from the stars of the show who they are and what they're all about. And because she is left to right on my screen and she's smiling at me as I'm looking at the screen, we're going to start with Lindsey Broom. So we'll start with Lindsey and Marlene, and then we'll move to our students that we're going to introduce as well. So, Lindsey, give us a bit of background about who you are.
Hi, everybody. I am Lindsey Broom. I currently work at a company called Food Buy here in Charlotte. I have a background in sports marketing. Originally from West Virginia, went to WVU for undergrad, and then went to UNC Charlotte for grad school. We are currently going through the college process with my 17-year-old stepson, who is a senior in high school right now. So this is very relevant to what we're doing. And then I can talk a bit about, once we kind of get into it, kind of my experience and how things I wish that I knew that I didn't know, and things even now that I'm hoping Marlene, who's gone through it with her kids, can help me out a little bit with as it relates to the 17-year-old who's trying to navigate everything right now. But I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Lindsey. Very happy that you're here. Lindsey mentioned Marlene, so a little bit of foreshadowing. Marlene Hendricks is joining us here from Hornet Sports and Entertainment. Marlene, tell us about yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Marlene Hendricks. I work with the Hornets in the capacity of Senior VP of Guest Experience and Staffing. And my experience with just navigating the college process was because I had a daughter, or I have a daughter, and at the time, 6 years ago, she was going through the process, and there was just so many things I didn't know. And unfortunately, I find with the advisement process in high school a little lackluster. So I really had to step in, and in stepping in, I learned a lot, and I've really kept abreast. I would say at least 75% engaged on what's still going on in the field of getting someone connected. And I think the perspective I will also bring today is more from the standpoint of interviewing and looking at resumes of students that went to college, went through college, and now showed up with things that they still didn't know they should do. So I can just bring also a perspective of that, and also some of the things that I did with my daughter that turned out to be really successful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marlene and Lindsey. And as you alluded to, Marlene, I think we're going to start with the college decision, and then hopefully towards the tail end of this presentation, we'll be connecting that back to what Sports Biz Camps is all about, which is career opportunities in the sports business. And for many students, and you're going to hear from a couple, they kind of know that that's already what they want to do. So we can give them some advice on like how that college decision is going to affect that career decision. But even
Right.
for those that don't, we'll have that conversation. But once again, I think that's important to note that you both are great people, parents, and that's all. And you made these decisions yourselves, but also you've got that sports business background, which is really what we are all about at Sports Biz Camps.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to introduce some Sports Biz Camps alumni. It's really fun to say alumni. It means that we've been doing something for long enough to have alumni. I'm really excited to introduce Ayana Yanni Anderson. She told me I can call her Yanni. She was a member of our first ever camp in 2019. I got to know her quite well as we were walking around all over uptown Charlotte for our site visits and field trips. Yanni, introduce yourself.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Ayana, aka Yanni, as he said. I am currently a freshman at Cape Fear Community College in Wilmington, North Carolina. I am also a student athlete. I play women's basketball, and I love being in college now since it's a lot of freedom.
Awesome, Yanni. We're gonna hear more from you as well.
You're thinking.
Yeah, lots of freedom, right? Well, apparently all that freedom, you're spending your time talking about topics like this with adults. So like wise choices. You're making wise decisions as a college student. And then last but not least, Zach Yakub. So I think Zach is a really great representation of using your time in high school and even, or if you're in college, of like networking and putting yourself out there and connecting professionally with people. Zach introduced himself to me on LinkedIn, and that's how we met, because he has a website, howtogetajobinsports.com. Did I get that right, Zach?
You got it right.
All one word. And he'll talk a little bit about what that is. But Zach, kind of introduce yourself, where you're currently at, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Zach Yakub. I'm a junior at Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda, Maryland. And as Pat said, I run a website called howtogetajobinsports.com. I reached out to him on LinkedIn, which is where I get my interviews, and I just talk to people who have jobs in sports. And as far as, my perspective in the college process, I'm also a student athlete, trying to play in college is a very complicated process. And, I'm very excited to learn today from our panelists.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. And once again, howtogetajobinsports.com. We'll drop it in the chat. But it's really great content. And Zach, both Zach and Yanni are just amazing young people that can speak for Marlene and Lindsey. That's why we want to have this conversation today, because we want to support people like yourselves, because there's so much we didn't know. So going to that, I'm going to bring it back to you, Lindsey. And then I think we're going to have a little bit of a consult between you and Marlene to a certain extent. So, Lindsey, maybe personally talk through how you navigated your college experience, and maybe what you wish you would have known as an individual. And then I would love to kind of have you ask Marlene a couple questions as to some advice that she has for you as you're trying to consult your son, Gavin.
Yeah. So, I'm not that old, but I'm older. And so when I went through the college experience a few years ago, college was just something that you did after high school. It wasn't a question of where do I go, what do I do? It was just you graduate from high school. Same way you get your driver's license when you turn 16, you go to college. But I didn't know how to do that. And, as Marlene said, there was an academic advisor at my school in high school, but, my mom didn't really know how to navigate this, and we just didn't really know how to navigate it. So I ended up going to a community college for 1 year in West Virginia, and then transferring to West Virginia University. And one of the things that I wish that I would have known back then was looking at, okay, going to a community college, I think is really great. And you save money that way. It was good for me to live at home. I wasn't quite ready for all the freedom when I was a freshman, to be honest. But, there were some classes that I took that didn't transfer over the same way that, I was taking them. So I wasn't really looking ahead, knowing that I'm going to this community college with the intent to go to a 4-year college. It was just kind of like, I'm going to do this thing because it's in front of me, and then I'll do the next thing that's in front of me. So I wish that I would have had a little bit more kind of guidance as to, you want to work in sports, these are the steps that you need to take to do it. Because I knew I wanted to work in sports, but I didn't know how. So, just kind of knowing all of those steps. I think now, as we're going through this process with Gavin, it's where do we even start? He's a senior and he has some colleges that he's interested in. He wants to work in sports. And so one of the things that we talk about is, okay, does it have a sports program, like a sports marketing program, or does it have a good athletic department where you could do like a business degree or something like that? But, really, where do we start in the process of narrowing down the schools, filling out applications? I think we're already behind. How do people find that information? How do people know what to do? He's taking college classes, right now at CP, which is great. And, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, everything's online right now. So he has access to some more things to get ahead. But scholarships, where do we even look for those? You know, all of these things that are kind of all of a sudden we have however many months to figure it out. And I fear that we're already behind. So I would love to hear from you, Marlene, and how, you know, okay, let's say we have the 5 schools that we're interested in. Now, what do we do?
Right. Yeah. So I would say the first thing I did was I went on the sites for the schools that was of yeah, we were of interest. So Carolina was one of the schools. We went on the site. We found out they had a multicultural department because you know, of course, my daughter is black. And on that site, we saw the different programs they had, the different offerings. So she did like Project Uplift, which is a program they have for minorities. You go on campus, you spend the weekend. They show you around what college life would be about. They talk to you about different programs of interest. They had seniors there that would, you know, partner with you. And so you got the real college experience because you dropped them off like on Friday. They stayed at the dorm. They also have a honors program that if you're an honors student, you go up. I think it was for a day or two. I can't remember. She also applied at University of Maryland. Yeah, University of Maryland because she wanted to be in journalism. So we looked at top journalism school. Of course, journalism is also very broad, right? So you could do movie, you could do television, you could do. So it's okay within journalism. Where do you want to go? So then we further narrowed it down, and so we looked at University of Florida, Maryland, Wake Forest, UNCG, and Chapel Hill. UNCG was her safe school. They tell you you should always have a safe school. So that was her safe school. Um, so once we identified the schools with the programs, you know, did some research. We actually subscribed to the Princeton, I think it's called the Princeton Journal or something. I can't remember. I can look up the name for you. But we subscribe to them, and then they tell you like all the schools, the ranking, what your GPA should be, what your SAT score should be. They tell you everything, how the school's ranking with the program you have an interest with, what's their graduation rate, percentage of, you know, rate, that how, you know, the average time the kids will stay in school to graduate, whether it's 4 years or 5 years, or some kids are just there forever. So those are the things we kind of looked at. And one of the things when we went to Carolina, I remember the dean, the associate dean saying, he's like, Mom, our job is to get them out of here in 4 years. They're not going to be hanging around. You know, we really have them on our program. So for me, it was like good because the money, gravy train's done after 4 years. Um, Unfortunately for us, she didn't get any scholarship, or she got one actually from ABC in Raleigh. But as far as funding, she didn't. But I was also working with a lot of her friends, and some were, you know, first generation going to college. So I did get exposed to what's out there. And if you are, you know, a minority first in your family going to college, you literally can go for free. Um, because there's so many different scholarships and grant programs that you can get. So I remember her friend got down to her computer. She got her laptop, printer, everything was packed and ready for her when we showed up for orientation in Chapel Hill. Also, a lot of colleges and universities, and especially now, they're trying to really diversify their population, not just to meet a quota, but because it makes the learning experience so much richer. And so I think it's important for you to really expose yourself to being a part of that community that you think will also make your learning experience really great. And it doesn't have to be a top name brand school, as long as it's a school that's reputable, that's really look at the graduation ratio of people that are graduating from the school, because you know they can have high enrollment but people fall off the second year, third year, and they're not graduating. So the graduation rate is very important, I think, for you to look at as well. I was sharing with Patrick that on Shark Tank, there was a gentleman that did the app, and I looked it up. It's actually called Scholly, Schollly, and he went to, I think he went to Yale, and um, for free. And he said he amassed millions of dollars in scholarship. Didn't use all of it, but just because he just kept applying. But the lesson in that, he said, it's at the end of the year, so much funding is really turned back over to the colleges and universities because kids are not tapping into it. And the question was why? And it's because they don't know where to look. And I know Yanni said recently when we were talking, it's very complicated, it's time consuming. So he created this app where you just go into the app and you can search. And from what I understand, it's doing really well. I directed my niece to it recently, and she called me and she said, like, this is great. So that's another resource that can be used.
So and I wanna get Yanni and Zach involved. Something you both said I think was important. Like the college decision is obviously very complicated. So we try to create systems to simplify complicated things. Like for me, neither of my parents had gone to college. So they didn't really know what they were doing necessarily, but we did like a pros and cons list, like what are the pros and cons of each school? Or I guess what I'm suggesting is like, what is the priority as you evaluate college?
Yeah.
Lindsay, you mentioned Gavin wants to study sports management. So like major, I guess, is what one criterion, right? Is the school that I'm interested, does it have the major that I want? And then obviously, Marlene, you mentioned journalism.
Right.
So kind of shifting gears to Zach and Yanni, and this is where I'd love for you guys to provide some feedback as a professional, but also as a parent. Do you all know what you want to study? And is that major, apart from wanting to play sports, is that the driving force for where you're applying? I guess, Yanni, we'll start with you.
I would say yeah, because like with me playing basketball, most of the majors that I wanted to look into was like, okay, looking at sports management, I was like, that's something I could do because I'm an athlete and I want to like stick with doing basketball, whether it's me playing or just like helping whoever like Miss Marlene's doing with the Hornets and with entertainment. So that's something I want to look into because I was looking into like I would say internships with ESPN back I'll say almost a year ago with one of the guys who came to Sports Biz for I think his name was Jeff. I think I forgot what his name was, like I was asking him, can I do like an internship so like just see behind the scenes of like how much hard work they're doing back there while everybody else like, oh, this is so easy. Nah, there's a lot of things you gotta do. Like you gotta get a lot of stats, hear what sports reporters are saying, and you gotta figure out what to do with that. So I was like, yeah, that's something I want to do because I will take my time into like dedicating myself into that and just knowing that they do all of this, that's something I want to look into, like be a sports reporter as well, because I've done sports interviews with a few coaches at my high school while I was still there. And they were really impressed of what I was asking them, like what questions related to that sport. Like I've done basketball, baseball, football, like that was a huge accomplishment to me. Like that's something I wanted to do. And then me being with Rise 1 year, that actually helped build my confidence because I actually did the interview in my school while I had practice with my few senior friends. And I was like, yeah, that's something I want to do. Like I really want to pursue that dream. And
Okay,
I still want to do that now.
so you definitely, as you're looking at playing, I know you mentioned you're at a community college, and obviously you're going to be matriculating to a 4-year college. So you definitely want to do something in the sports world.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so that's good, and that's kind of driving your decision on top of wanting to play. Zach,
Yes.
you've been interviewing probably hundreds of people by now that work in the sports world. Are you looking at a specific major as you're pursuing it? Is it sports management or is it something else?
Yeah, so I think this is a really great question for me because, it's something have always been fascinated in, and it was actually a question I asked every single person for a long time. What do you think the importance is of, sports administration, sports management? And you find that it varies. You can succeed in both, and people, tell me it's about internships, and they say, I'm not saying don't major in sports management. Just do it if you want to do it because you actually want to learn it, but it won't really help you. Like, for example, my dad majored in economics undergrad, immediately got a job in sports marketing with Gatorade, and was having dinner with Michael Jordan 2 weeks after he got the job. So it's from, what I've learned, it's just, more about the internships. But, I'm not saying I won't do it, but I don't think it's a huge deal. But I'd love to hear your guys' take on it. Love
Yeah.
Marlene, Lindsey.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. I think that was kind of the point. Like, if we think major is really important to our college decision, and independent of sports business or in general, like, I guess the question is for Marlene and Lindsey as professionals and also as parents, do you have to major in something to do it? Right. And if that's not the case, should that be the main driver to where you are looking at college? Marlene, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah. So my thought on this is it's not so much the major, right? I think it's your passion, right? What are you passionate about? So my daughter just always wanted to be in journalism. In school, a real quick story, when they had, you do a book and you did a book report, every book report was a play, was a production. I would come home, they were doing Huckleberry Finn. She had hay in the yard. People had plaid shirts on. She was like yelling at the kids. These were sophomores, and she was so intense because they weren't paying attention to just make a book report. But everything was about the video camera or the photo camera. So, even when she was in school, I'm like, oh, you're going to go work for a TV station. You're going to be on TV. She's like, no, I want to be a director or producer. I want to do post production on movies. And that's what she's doing in LA. And she did double major journalism and communication and, worked with the Daily Tar Heel and all that stuff. But she wanted to be behind the camera. So, but she's passionate about it. She everything in her life is about watching movies, critiquing movies, looking at their angles and things, right? So as I heard Yanni speaking, to me, what she's saying she wanted to do was broadcasting, not she want to do broadcasting about sports. So it could be a double major where she's doing sports and broadcasting, or she's doing broadcasting and communication, right? But you could hear her passion in broadcasting, not so much sports. Now, can she end up with a sports team doing broadcasting? Absolutely. She could end up at ESPN. She could end up at a TV station. She could end up at college calling games. But it sounded like her passion was broadcasting. And I do agree with Zach. My degree is not in sports. Mine is in hospitality and tourism. I went to FIU and did hospitality. And I ended up in sports because I love sports. And I remember telling my professor, he was laughing at me. I said, I love sports. I like helping people, and I love planning parties. And so in my role, I get to do all three, but my degree is not in sports. But I'm very passionate about what I do because, I love my staff. I love helping them. I love when I get to plan things for them. I love when I get to have training programs to teach them. And I love that I'm around sports. And this is my fourth sporting team that I'm working with. So I think it goes back to your passion. Like, what are you passionate about? And then that will kind of take you there.
Yeah, and Lindsey, like I think you studied sports management at WVU, right?
Yeah.
But
So
now you're not working in sports, right? So like kind of walk through that.
Yeah. So, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. One way is what is going to encourage you to learn the most. If you are interested in sports and sports marketing or sports management or sports business is a way to pique your interest in the world of business, and because I did undergraduate at WVU, sports management, and then I did my MBA at UNC Charlotte, and at the time they had a sports program. And really what that sports program meant was just, instead of in accounting class, us talking about, a a corporation as the example. We were using sports as the example because sports is a business just like any other business. And so now that the company that I work for and the role that I'm in is not directly related to sports, all of those things that I was doing in sports are the same. You know, it's whether it's company A or sports property B, they're all businesses. So I think, you know, looking at a couple of different things as you're looking at these colleges is where do you want to be? What feels, I think Marlene, I don't know if you said it today, but what feels like home? Where do you feel comfortable? But where really can you learn skills and tools that are going to help you to know more tomorrow than you know today? So what's going to be the catalyst to help you to retain the information? If you're getting your examples in sports economics versus regular economics, and you're looking at, you know, if those examples are just going to make it stick better, then yes, you should look at sports to do that. But you don't have to have a sports marketing degree to work in sports, and you don't have to not have a sport. Like, you can do whatever you want. Honestly, once you get a degree, you can do whatever you want. Unless you want to be a doctor, you might need some specialized things for that. There are certain industries and certain roles that will require you to go through very, very, very specific classes and training. And the other thing to think about in college is your first 2 years is really building the foundation. It's not, you know, you're typically not in your major your first 2 years. So your first 2 years are your basic classes to build the foundation for whatever is next. So if you don't know, that's fine. You go somewhere that feels comfortable, that may or may not have a couple of different programs that you could be interested in. And I really am from the mindset of everything is temporary and everything is preparing you for the next thing. And so if, you know, if you commit to a school, it's different if you're an athlete, right? Like, that's a different game, because if you commit to play there, then you commit to play there. But if you're going as a student because you're interested in a school, you're not trapped there forever, you know, like you go, you try it. And if it doesn't work, there's other things that will work. I just think, you know, you don't ever have to be defined by a box, I guess is the whole point of that big, long ramble of you can do whatever you want, but just pick and choose things that are going to help you know more tomorrow than you do today.
Thank you.
Something else, I know and I always said, just to apply to college, like when I went through the process with my daughter, I was so overwhelmed. I mean, I even said, this is a profession that someone could do just to help kids go to school, because it's really a lot. But I tell you how you can kind of, you know, like narrow it down and not make it so overwhelming. Start early. Because if you start early and you do your research, now it's like you're interviewing the school versus when you're at the end, you're panicking and hoping they'll accept you. So when you start early, you can do things like go on campus and just see what the campus feels like. It's almost like when you buy your car, you sit in it, or you buy a house. When you walk in, you're like, I know this is for me. Or when you buy an outfit and you put it on and you're like, yep, I feel good in this. And that's what college is. You have to feel good in it. My goddaughter recently, she had over 15 schools going after her. She plays soccer. And she, I mean, tall, lean, everything, even Carolina. And I wanted her to go to Carolina, and she didn't. She went to Florida because she liked, well, beside the fact that they get to ride a scooter, but she just loved the feel of when she was on campus. It felt like home to her. And so that is really important. And, you know, my daughter had all 5 schools accepted her, but Carolina felt like home to her. So you have to start early, because if you're doing it in your senior year, you don't have time to get all your work done, do all the things they're asking you to do, and then really making the right decision. So you really, I mean, I'm kind of crazy. So we started our freshman year in the process of just going on college visits. So it's really important you start early so you have time to make the best selection for you.
So, Zach, Yanni, any additional follow-up questions regarding, I guess, kind of one of the major steps in the process, which is where do I go, but what do I major in? Any questions or follow-ups on that?
Well, I did want to touch on something Marlene just said about how this could be a profession, you know, helping kids get into college. My mom is a college essay coach, so you really nailed that one right there.
Yeah, it is. Oh, forget about the essay process. I mean, we're doing essays and you know, you wish the questions from all the schools were the same because then you could just send the same essay, right?
Yeah.
But you're not all the same, so you have to do different essays, and your personality has to come through. And I'll tell you one thing that was really important. The colleges, even though they have the SAT requirements and they want you to do honors and stuff, one of the things I learned was they want to know you as a person, right? What are you going to bring to really enhance their college environment? How are you going to make them better? And so, one easy thing that my daughter and I did, well, she started it and I just supported her. She collected books. She set up a box, went to Harris Teeter. Hey, can I set up a box? She set up a box. She handed out flyers in the neighborhood. I'm collecting books for middle school kids. Please donate. And she collected, I think, somewhere up of 500 books and donated it to the school. And so she was able to write about that in her essay. And she had pictures and added that to her portfolio because what that is showing is leadership and how you give back to your community. So little things you could, volunteer to read to an elderly person. Now you can do it by Zoom. You don't even have to leave your home, and you just take a picture. And they want to see how you're able to do things outside of studying. They just don't want someone with like a 4.0 GPA. They want to see you doing stuff, helping in your community, and you get scholarships even from doing that.
And then one thing I wanted to add too is that there is an app called Common App that I was recently made aware of that does aggregate all of the application processes together so that you're not individually submitting applications for every school. And as far as the essays go, it will tell you like the ones that have similar questions. And right now, which I don't know if Ayana, if this was the case for you, but a lot of schools are not requiring SAT and ACT tests, at least through 2021, just due to the fact that kids are unable to take them. So I think that they're going to need other ways, exactly to your point, Marlene, of other ways of differentiating between students, which I think this is a great thing that, the students and the kids who want to be there versus just if you were good at taking a test or bad at taking a test, that you're eliminated in some way. So I think that it opens the opportunity a lot wider right now.
So I kind of want to close the loop on the major conversation, and we're going to play a game with Zach because he's a high school student and he knows the game and he sounds like he's been doing this. So fact or fiction, Zach, a high school student, for them, the most important aspect of their college decision process should be what they major in, fact or fiction.
That's fiction.
Attaboy, right? So I think everyone kind of agreed across the board that it's not necessarily what you major in, it's not directly connected to what your potential career is going to be, right? So don't say, well, I need to major in that, and these are the schools that are going to do it, right? Because at the end of the day, what you major in, you might not do. People switch majors all the time. I'm a professor, that happens quite often. So don't make that the most important part of the decision. I think hopefully that should relieve some stress or pressure on some high school students who are saying, I don't want to pick what I want to do for the rest of my life when I'm 15 or 16 years old. That's a lot of stress. That's a lot of pressure. So, something Marlene said and Lindsey touched on, don't focus on, I need to major in that. That's the rest of my career. Take a class that interests you, because once you guys get to college, and Yanni, you know this, you don't have to go every day. There's not someone making you go and tracking attendance. So try to take classes that you're more inclined to get up out of bed and actually go and want to learn. Okay, so hopefully that should simplify that process. And then I think one thing I thought that Marlene did a great job of talking about, which was starting early. And we had a question coming in when is starting early? It's freshman year. That doesn't mean necessarily you have to go across the country looking at schools as a freshman, but maybe put down on a piece of paper what interests me. Start the process of thinking through what that is. So not what I should major in, what interests me, what classes do I do well in? Typically people like the classes in which they do well. So think about, what do I do well and what do I like? And usually those things fit together.
And also, Patrick, if you want to go away to college, an easy way to start is, do I want to live in cold weather? Hot.
Yeah.
Do I want to be near the beach? Or do I want to be in the mountains? And then like, okay, I want to be in beach. Okay, start looking for colleges close to the beach, mom. Or, do you want a large campus or do you want a small campus?
Yep.
Right? So my daughter wanted a large campus because everywhere she has lived is always a small town. Right? I remember she went to Wake and she came back. She's like, no, they all know each other's business. Way too small. They're all dating each other's boyfriend. Way too small. Right? So she didn't want to go to Wake. She thought it was just way too small. So she took, again, Carolina. So easy way. What do I like? Who am I as a person? Hey, do I want to go to a HBCU? Do I like all the culture of the fraternities and where those are things that you can start thinking of in your freshman year. Then the next year, now you have your 5 schools that you narrowed it down to by the beach. So now you start like, what are they asking for? What programs do they have? What do I like doing? And then you just take it off in pieces. But if you wait until your senior year to figure out West Coast, East Coast, I want to stay in the South, then okay, who is in the South? Oh, they don't have the program I like. It's going to be overwhelming. And then you're going to end up just chilling at home when everyone else has gone to college.
One of my favorite quotes, and I think this is appropriate for this, is how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So don't wait around until senior year to eat the elephant. Like start thinking about what interests me. And I think that was a good segue, actually, Marlene, to I think the next part of the conversation. And I wanted to connect the dots on this because I know finances are a big part of the college conversation. But going back to what type of environment do you want to be in? So for instance, I teach at a Johnson Wales University in Charlotte. It's an uptown location, right? So that means that when you go here, like you don't get free parking. There's parking decks. And that when you live here, you live in an uptown setting. So it's more expensive than living in a college town, right? But the flip side is all of our students work. They all have jobs because they have access to financial opportunities in Charlotte. The other part of that is like, from an environment standpoint, it's a small school, meaning that like, I know your name, right? As your professor, I know your name. If you don't want to have a relationship with your professor, like don't go to a small school. And if you don't want to park on a parking deck and pay, like don't go. So what other kinds of advice would you guys give as far as like types of environments or a process that students can take to figure out in which environment would they succeed?
I I would say like when you was talking about like the small areas and stuff, that's one thing I will look into when it comes to like colleges. Because with me, I wanted to choose a large school, but the way it was going in my head and stuff, I was like, no, because one, I might get lost on campus. Two, you don't know where you're going. Three, you just going that's basically it. You're gonna get lost. So I was like, forget it. And now I just start narrowing it down into like a small / medium-sized schools.
Right.
And that's where if I was to be on campus right now, I already know where the buildings are because I already got a tour of the school, and it's not that far of a walking distance, even if I did have my car or not. Like I can still ask my roommates or stuff to say, hey, can you give me a ride? I need to go to my classes. And they're literally, the buildings are like near each other, so you won't be late for nothing. And they have a parking deck too that you can literally just pay and go on your way. So that's one thing I was looking at when it comes to school. So, and plus I want to build a relationship with my professors, like Patrick has said earlier, because if you can build a connection with your professors, your teachers, whoever, then they can help you out throughout the years, whether you're in their class or not. Because today, I still have connections at my high school with certain teachers that I've learned with. And till this day, they're still like checking on me saying, hey, how you doing in this class? How you doing just basically in life? And that's one thing I like. And they said, if anything, just let me know and I can give it to you. And that's one thing I like when you have a huge connection with your professors, your teachers, just anybody in general. So that's one thing
So
I took out.
Zach, as a follow-up, like what type of environment are you looking at or how are you considering that as you think about a decision? Thank you, Yanni, for that answer too.
Yeah, that's great. There's a lot of things that are going into, my decision. I mean, like two schools I was looking at, it's like UNC and Michigan both have great, sports management programs. And, it's a night and day difference though, living in
Yeah.
Carolina, living in Michigan. And, there's so many things you don't think about when you just look at school rankings, right? You have to do your research.
Mhm.
And, also for me, trying to play in college, trying to find an academic fit, a baseball fit, and I personally prefer a big school just because there's a lot more people. I like people. So
Yeah.
that's my take on it.
So
I
Lindsay,
think
Marlene, yeah, Lindsay, go ahead.
one of the things that I think sometimes gets lost, like for me, when I was going through the process, I didn't look outside. Like there was the community college, and then there was WVU, and though I didn't even I mean, I knew other colleges existed, but it wasn't even in my brain to even consider them. Whereas right now, Gavin is looking at schools all over, which is great, but also if you are very close to your family, you got to think about traveling, and you got to think about, it's not just the physical school itself and getting around at the school, but you think about, first going away from home, how comfortable are you going to be being thousands of miles away? And some people are totally cool with that, but not everybody is. So, I think that yes, there are the school rankings, there is the size of the school that matters, there is the distance, there is the weather, you're going to live there. And I think that, it's really difficult to make that transition in your mind. When you're in high school, you live at home and the comforts of your home, and somebody is making sure, to what Pat said, that you're going to class, you probably have food, somebody is making sure that your needs are being met. When you go to college, you are responsible to make sure that your needs are being met. So if you need to be at a smaller school because that environment allows for the professors to help fill some of those roles, or, I just think that you just need to look at your personality a bit and say, where am I going to be comfortable? And if ultimately you would like to go to a big school, but you're not comfortable right now doing it, there's ways to gradually do that, which is what I did. Like I went to a community college because I was not ready, but I can remember vividly my very first day of walking on campus at WVU and not knowing where I was going, what I was doing, and feeling, very overwhelmed, but also like comfortable in the sense that I've already done a year of college, right? Like, so I just think that there's different ways to get to where you want to get to, but just know kind of where are you starting, and be very realistic with yourself of what am I going to be comfortable with? What environment is going to be the best for me to have the best experience? Not just what is the name of or what does the logo look like, or what does the ranking say about this particular school? Because you can go to the best school in the country, but if you can't succeed there, then you wasted a lot of money for no reward. So I just think, just be realistic about how far you're comfortable straying, and what types of environments you thrive in.
Marlene, anything else you'd want to add to that?
No, I think that was really good. And just speaking of, choosing, like Zach said, he's looking at Michigan and Carolina, and he lives in Maryland. So obviously, part of the consideration, this is going to be out of state tuition, and you know the which can be higher, but usually I think after a year, if you become resident and you change your license and stuff, you become in state. But also the good thing with going out of state, colleges do have a certain number of out of state students that they will pull in from different coasts. So it also increases your likelihood of being accepted as well.
And I think kind of along the clearly college is really expensive these days. And everyone everyone wants filet mignon, but not everyone can afford that. And that's a real part of the conversation. So I do think as you're thinking through the cost implications, there's the cost of tuition, but costs are how much it costs versus how much you can make. And I think that's an important distinction. If you go to a college that's expensive, but obviously apply for scholarships, which I thought, Marlene, you touched a lot on like, and Lindsay, we've talked about this. There's a lot of scholarships that go non-allocated because no one ever applies, which is just the saddest thing ever. And some of them are really random. Like when I was in college, I went to Ohio University. I was an economics major and I was from Cleveland. There was a family that endowed a small scholarship for an economics major from Cleveland. And if I didn't apply for like through FAFSA, basically you like go through the system, I didn't even know that thing existed. And I didn't get a lot of money, but it was free money. Like it was like, oh, this is great. So make sure you go through those systems and apply. I think it's step one. But step two is when you're looking at colleges, what does it cost to go? But what kind of money can you make there? So once again, I went to a small school in the middle of nowhere. There were not a lot of employment opportunities. You could work at a bar, you could work at a restaurant. For our students at Johnson & Wales, they work, like some of them work part or full-time jobs while going to school because they're in Charlotte. So it's what it costs to go, but it's also what you can make while you're in school. And then another thing that I wasn't aware of that we have a lot now is we have graduate assistantships or GAs or work study programs that you can have with various universities where they'll help offset the cost of education for you working for the university. And I don't know that a lot of students are aware of that either. So think about how much it's going to cost, what you're going to spend, but also think about how much money you can make based upon where you go.
Well, and I think too, it's a big thing to think about is not just how much does it cost to go to school, but how much does it cost to live and live the way that you want to live? Because if you have you might have this is how much I can afford to pay to go to school, or this is how much I have in scholarships, and this might cover your tuition and your books, but you got to eat, and it might cover where you live, but what else do you want to be doing? So I think, yeah, to Pat's point, there's a lot of money out there to be had, but just know that you probably need more than you think that you do.
And I think there is a calculator that will help you to figure it out also on the FAFSA app that will figure out everything. Something I did want to touch on, because we talk about applying to a number of schools. Application fee, I mean, it's $75, $100, and this is something I know some students may not even have the first application fee, moreover having 5 application fees. I remember when I was doing Brittany's, my daughter's, at McDonald's. She didn't qualify for it, but McDonald's do have scholarships where they will pay for your application fee online. So there are certain companies, they will like give you a scholarship for application fee, and usually it's based on community service. So that is also something to look for. And some schools also will waive your application fee if your income bracket is below a certain threshold.
Thank you. So we've kind of talked through major being important, and we've talked through, I think, costs and overall just evaluation of the entire experience. So we're going to play Fact or Fiction with Lindsey and Marlene because Zach got all the fun last time. And then we want to shift to kind of career focus for the last 10 minutes or so. So Fact or Fiction, where you go to school is the most important decision you'll make for your career.
I think that's a fiction.
Fiction.
All right. So there's a trend here, high school students.
So it's a fiction, right? However, I find that even when you go on LinkedIn, there are times when I'll see a job pop up in my feed and it will say someone from FIU is working here also, right? So that's the long game, the long-term benefit. I know, like my daughter, she's in California. When she went out there, they had a big Chapel Hill alum program. And they would invite her over for Thanksgiving because she lived there alone. They will send her jobs and stuff. So there is that portion of it on the back end, but initially go in, because a lot of schools now, they have alumni programs, and some, alumni are president of the United States or, chief of staff somewhere else. But, going in, it's all about the comfort, because, you could say, I want to go to Michigan because Madonna went to Michigan, right? And you get out of Michigan and like, hey, Madonna, hit me up. And so again, it's just, you just have to go with, I go back to, what are you passionate about and where do you feel comfortable living?
Lindsey, anything else you'd want to add on the importance of where you go to school?
I think where you're comfortable. And I also think that no matter where you go, if you are intentional about creating a network, that network will be there post-graduation. So I think, there are some schools obviously that have a much larger network, But if you're intentional, you can be at the smallest school in the country and create a really strong group of, 20, 30 people. And then you have that group for the long haul. So, I think go where you're comfortable and what makes sense for you.
So when you make the decision, you are who you hang out with. So when Zach makes the decision, go to wherever school he decides, he's aligning himself with every other graduate in the past and in the future from that. So choose wisely. But I think it's important to know, and Marlene and Lindsey, this is where we kind of think, well, we're going to shift. And I want Zach and Yanni to ask you guys questions about your career. But Zach, if you decide to go to Harvard, you're not just going to get that job because you went to Harvard, right? It's not just where your degree is from. I think that's an important distinction. It's who you are. If you get into wherever you go, Zach, or because you created how to get a job in sports.com, not because you went to Michigan or Chapel Hill. And Yanni, it's going to be wherever you pick because of who you are and the experience that you had. So don't put all your pressure on what I need to major in and I have to go to this school. It's what you guys make of it. And no one's going to hire you just because of where you go to school. It's an important takeaway. But choose wisely because that's who you're associating with for the rest of your career. So I do want to stop and give it to Zach or Yanni. We've got Marlene and Lindsey here. They both have significant sports business experience. Both of you are interested in that. They've talked to you about the importance of college and what you major in. I want to hand the mic over to you and let you ask them a couple questions here for the last 9 minutes or so as far as how your college decision will connect to potential career.
Yeah, well, something you just touched on, the Harvard discussion. I mean, so my dad interviews people for jobs. He works in, in sales. He interviews people for sales positions, and he's had people who have gone to Harvard asking to work for him, and he doesn't factor in it at all. And he says he's not alone in that. And I've talked to plenty of people, and they have said that is the same. So my question, I had a question for you guys is, when you're in the city, let's say, like Charlotte or somewhere, you have more opportunities, get internships with sports teams. Would you factor that into your college decision and into, getting a job there too when you're older?
Yes, it can be actually more competitive because you're in the city and the number of schools that are around you. But what I find is a lot of kids will go to another city to actually do their internship. So they may go to school at Chapel Hill, but then they'll do, like my daughter, she did her internship in California, like go figures, right? Because that's where she wanted to live. So she wanted to learn the environment and learn the culture and just start being a part of it. So yeah, I mean, it all depends. Again, people do it for different reasons, and sometimes it's just where you are able to land the internship because it's so competitive.
Yeah, and I would say too, I moved to Charlotte because there were so many, what I thought, sports opportunities. But to Marlene's point, it is very competitive. But I think don't discount any experience. And so whether you're in an area, the school, if they have an athletic department, there is plenty to be done. If there is a minor league baseball team, like there are plenty of experiences that you can have that will be relevant to the job that you want. So wherever you are, find what those are.
Yanni, clearly you want to be in sports broadcasting. You're obviously great on camera and you've got some experience doing that. Any questions? Zach, you are as well. You're both Yanni, any questions for Marlene or Lindsey? And obviously they're both women working in the sports industry as well. So
yeah. It's just a huge question. Like, how do you prioritize yourself with you being parents to your kids and doing your jobs as y'all doing today?
I don't know if you guys have seen, but I've been, my younger son has been behind this. So I'm like sending him notes on here. So you just do the best that you can for the moments that you have. I read something that it was like, there's just 50 balls in the air and some of those balls are glass and some of them are plastic. So you don't want to drop the glass balls, but sometimes the plastic ones, they drop, and sometimes that's at work, sometimes that's at home. I think you just do the best that you can. The most important thing that I have found is just to be honest with everybody involved, whether that's your family or your job, and to communicate Because at the end of the day, the majority of companies want people who can produce. It's not about the number of hours that you spend doing the singular thing. It's what is the output? What are you bringing to the table? And that, I think, you know, as you have children or don't have children, but as you have experiences, you add layers to what you know. And so therefore you add layers to what you can provide. And it's just, you know, like I said, some days are easier than others. But ultimately the goal is to keep as many balls up as I can.
Yeah. You know, the most important thing is, again, I go back to doing what you love, because I remember when I was with the Dolphins and I left because the hours, you know, was brutal because I worked football and baseball, because Wayne was the owner of both teams. So, you know, went right out of baseball, right into football, you know, hardly a break. And I left because I'm like, oh, I don't have any time with my daughter. And I hated it. I went to work for Kemper Insurance, and in 6 months, I didn't even last 6 months. I went on disability. I mean, I was miserable. And so I went back and worked in sports. I worked with the Heat. But I was so miserable that poor child was being abused. So you have to, like, as a parent, find your sweet spot, what you love, and then, like Lindsay said, then it becomes a juggling act. And I think the biggest thing is you just have to real. I saw a quote yesterday from Hoda Kotb. Um, I don't have to be um, perfect. I just have to be real, right? So it's not that you're not trying to be perfect, because you're not. Just be real and in what you're doing, and make sure you're doing the best you can and give quality. I mean, I was at every parent meeting. My daughter played basketball. I was at the basketball games. You know, after she went to bed, yeah, I put my computer up and I would keep working. I would work a concert till midnight, and then I would come home, sleep, and drive to Chapel Hill for something she was doing. And she just kept signing up and doing more things. And I just like, okay, I'll be there. You know, I would sleep in her dorm room. You know, you just do what you have to do to be there. And you know, as a single mom, that was hard. But I mean, you know, it worked out. And there are days when I wanted to be perfect, and I realized I'm not going to be perfect, and I had to just let it go. If I don't, someone just took it out of my hand. You know, God just like, soup, zap, you know, you can't handle this today. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm straight.
And I mean, I think, you know, Yanni, like, it seems, I don't know what it's like to be a student athlete in college, right? Like, you're juggling and balancing already. Like, when you and Zach, you think about how you're going to translate your experience as student athletes into the world, you guys do that all the time. You're juggling all the time now. So have confidence that you'll figure it out, because you guys are figuring it out now. I
Just
want
don't put this intense pressure on yourself. Whatever, if you're 20, enjoy being 20. If you're 21, enjoy being 21. Learn everything you need to learn. And again, if you're taking small bites off the elephant ahead of time, you won't be overwhelmed and in that moment.
So we're getting ready to close down, and before we say thank yous, I want to put our high school students on the spot here, high school and college students on the spot. So, you know, Zach, you've been following along, listening. You do a lot of interviews. I know you've been taking notes. You've been paying attention. So we're going to put you in the driver's seat based upon what you've learned. Talk to the high school students in the audience. What is one tip you'd give them as they navigate their college decision?
Oh, oh. Don't narrow yourself, you know, like I had said, you know, like a few months ago, you know, I'm a major in sports management, right? And then, you know, I live in Maryland, UMD, and then I'm crossing UMD off my list just because I want to major in sports management. They don't have a sports management degree. So I think it's silly to say, you know, like, you know, if you're, you know, 16 and you think you want to be a doctor, uh, that's great, but don't just instantly not even consider any school, just slash them off. There's a lot of, you know, opportunities and things that, you know, from doing my interviews, people never end up, you know, where they started.
Yeah,
So it doesn't mean they're less successful than they thought they were. It just means they didn't end up where they started.
different options.
Great perspective, Zach. Thank you. Yanni, how about you?
One piece of advice I would say is just be careful of choosing your schools. what, like Zach said, with your majors, make sure you narrate it down so you have the best experience in college, wherever your choice of college may be. Like this, my school, this was the best decision for me. So just choose something that'll make you happy and you
And
can just live your best life, meet new people.
And Yanni, I really think you do it. Like you seem like you know yourself in an environment in which you succeed, and you've talked about that. So I think that's a big part of it too. Like you've done some self-reflection, you've thought about that. So know yourself before you make that decision. I want to
Yeah.
say thank you to Yanni. Thank you so much. It's great to see you again. It's awesome to know that 2 years ago we had just met walking around uptown with sports biz camps, and now you're here joining us, and you're in community college. So it's so great to see you progress and grow. Zach, I'm so glad you shot me that note on LinkedIn, man. Very impressive stuff, and I love that you're learning, but that you're sharing with your classmates and people you don't even know to help them. And I think that's servant leadership. And you're only 16, so you should know what that is, but you're doing it on a daily basis. So thank you. And then speaking of servant leadership, Marlene and Lindsey, thank you so much for talking about your personal experiences, talking to some of the challenges, and providing advice. This is I know there's a lot of chaos going on, but you guys should feel good knowing that you did some good today, helping both Yanni and Zach and other students that are interested in figuring out what is a challenging environment.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate your continued support of Sports Biz Camp. So once again, October is College and Career Insights months for Sports Biz Camps. We're doing different weekly segments every week. This was the first of many, because for many to work in the sports business, college is that first big step. So hopefully we helped alleviate any concern. You're not feeling overwhelmed. You're feeling empowered, motivated. We've got some really great resources. Scally and Common App, take advantage of those. And if you have any questions, just look up Zach Yakub on LinkedIn, and I'm sure he'll provide you some thoughts. Thank you all. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, guys.